Hey there, movie lovers. Welcome back to Rocky Watches Movies. Today we're boldly going where few have gone before with the 1984 sci-fi adventure Star Trek III: The Search for Spock. This film takes us deeper into the Star Trek universe, packed with action and emotion. But how much do you really know about what went on behind the scenes? So beam up and let's go warp speed through 20 things you never knew about Star Trek III: The Search for Spock. When The Wrath of Khan opened, writer Harve Bennett was invited to begin writing and producing Star Trek III the very next day. This was the quickest turnaround of his career. However, there was still concern over the massively over-budget first film, the motion picture. Before production could begin, Bennett needed to assemble a team capable of controlling costs without compromising the film's quality. For the script, he collaborated with the director chosen for the project, Leonard Nimoy. Together, they developed the core story, and Nimoy focused on shaping the film's overall look and tone. During the production of The Wrath of Khan, studio chief Michael Eisner mistakenly believed that Nimoy had insisted on Spock being killed off. Consequently, when the sequel was planned, Eisner assumed the actor was entirely opposed to Star Trek. Harve Bennett, William Shatner, and Leonard Nimoy all recounted having to convince Eisner of the truth before Nimoy could be appointed as director. Ironically, once this was resolved, Gene Roddenberry joked with Bennett that, as producer, he had effectively hired a director who could not be fired. After all, the film was named after the character Nimoy portrayed. The notion that Admiral Kirk would risk his entire career merely on the off chance of saving Spock was not always a clear aspect of his character. Writer Bennett drew the idea from a poem written by a fan, which he came across in a Star Trek magazine. Bennett was particularly struck by the reference to Kirk's noble self being left behind on Genesis, and he used this as the inspiration for the film. When The Wrath of Khan enjoyed a record-breaking opening weekend, Paramount quickly seized the opportunity to develop more sequels and spin-offs. While Harve Bennett was busy drafting his first sequel, future Ferris Bueller writer and director John Hughes was crafting a screenplay for a Star Trek prequel entitled The Rise of Khan. Hughes' story offered a space-age reimagining of the Count of Monte Cristo, and Hughes delivered his 136-page script in January 1983. But Paramount's development department was unimpressed and issued scathing notes on the project. William Shatner brought his trademark humour to the project. He recalled that after Nimoy had been hired as director, his friend visited him while he was filming T.J. Hooker. Nimoy helped direct a single set piece on the show, which Shatner jokingly claimed accounted for every decision Nimoy would make while directing Star Trek III. Shatner candidly stated that because of this experience, he had taught Nimoy everything he would ever need to know about directing. In a dispute between Nimoy and Bennett, there was a disagreement over who should portray Commander Krug, the Klingon responsible for David's death. While Christopher Lloyd ultimately assumed the role, Leonard Nimoy had preferred Edward James Olmos for the part. Although Olmos was by no means an unknown actor, he was not high on Harve Bennett's list of potential choices. Robin Curtis took over the role of Lieutenant Savick for the character's second appearance, having replaced Kirstie Alley. Initially, all involved had expected Alley to return, which had resulted in a larger role for Savick in the script. However, Alley's agent requested a fee that exceeded the film's budget. In his autobiography, I Am Spock, Nimoy expressed regret over losing Alley, noting that the amount being requested was even higher than what DeForest Kelley was being paid. The film marked the first appearance of the massive Earth space dock model in Star Trek, which involved several notable aspects during its creation. The primary model, standing 1 meter tall, was built from plexiglass. This material allowed the model makers to address the challenge of illuminating the thousands of windows on the station. Rather than crafting individual window spaces, They painted the plexiglass and then scratched off the paint to reveal the windows. The entire model was then illuminated from within by a core of neon lights. Filming the interior of Space Dock was a lengthy process that took several months to complete. Effects cameraman Scott Farrar determined that to make the interior appear convincing, it was necessary to introduce a degree of atmospheric haze. The crew achieved this by using blue-coloured gels to create a distinctive hue, while smoke was blown into the set and filmed through, lending the environment a more worn and lived-in appearance. Although the Excelsior was always described as larger than the Enterprise, the filming model was actually 12 inches shorter. As the ship appeared less frequently in the film than the Enterprise, the crew saw no need to construct a model as large or as intricate. An elaborate sequence showing Spock being carried to the steps of Mount Seleya was filmed but mostly removed during editing. The script included a scene featuring a young Vulcan girl who breaks free from her father's grasp to give Spock the Vulcan salute and deliver the line, "Live long and prosper, Spock." Although the child actress Catherine Blum received screen credit, her scene was ultimately left on the cutting room floor. Paramount reportedly considered cutting one of the film's most significant set pieces, the ending on Vulcan. The studio felt the conclusion was too long and preferred to end the film immediately after the destruction of the Genesis planet, with Spock recovering aboard the Bird of Prey and a brief happy ending as the ship departed into the sunset, so to speak. Producer Harve Bennett and director Nimoy disagreed and ultimately kept their ending, allowing Spock to recover his mental faculties through the Faltor Pan refusion ceremony. Commander Krug's loyal dog remains at his side for much of the film. The model, named Fifi Rebozo by the crew, was deliberately designed to be a repulsive creature. Its mouth was operated by spring-loaded jaws, with Ken Ralston manipulating the mechanics, while 3 other operators hidden from view controlled the rest of the model. Clumps of torn wigs were attached with spray adhesive, and the model was misted with water just before filming to give it a slimier, more menacing appearance. The ears, though, were left immobile as the crew felt movement would make the fearsome creature appear cute. Using the same self-destruct code from the original series episode, Let That Be Your Last Battlefield, Kirk initiates the Enterprise's auto-destruction. To achieve the effect, several shots were layered. The first focused on the bridge itself, filmed using a separate bridge module in front of a starfield background. The shot then widened to show the Bird of Prey maneuvering out of danger, filmed upside down to create the illusion of zero gravity. For the sequence showing fires melting the registration number on the saucer section, visual effects supervisor Ralston had a styrofoam model created. He then used dripping acetone at intervals to simulate melting. Finally, for the climactic explosion, a much smaller model was constructed, allowing the crew to destroy the ship safely. Although brief, this scene was a technically complex achievement for Ralston and the ILM team. From Nimoy's perspective, the most challenging scene to film was the one in which Dr. McCoy speaks to an unconscious Spock in sickbay. For this sequence, Nimoy had to appear on camera without opening his eyes or reacting in any way. As a result, he was unable to watch DeForest Kelley's performance, which, according to Nimoy, left Kelley exasperated by the small, involuntary tics Nimoy was making. The director humorously noted that Kelley seemed to think Nimoy was trying to communicate coded directions with each blink. During production, a fire threatened to destroy the entire set, prompting everyone on hand to spring into action, including William Shatner. He joked that his efforts to fight the blaze were his way of ensuring the film stayed on schedule, avoiding any conflicts with other projects he had lined up. The resulting damage was concealed with large black curtains, covering holes in the ceiling that might have allowed sunlight to disrupt filming. Remarkably, shooting was able to resume almost immediately despite the incident. Although The Search for Spock had a budget of around $5 million higher than The Wrath of Khan, it remained very much a budget production, with sets repurposed wherever possible. Some examples are the dingy spacebar where McCoy is arrested was a redress of the Enterprise sickbay. The Bird of Prey bridge was literally the rear portion of the Klingon battlecruiser Amar bridge from the motion picture. The circular platform where Krug and his pet sit had once been behind the helm, while the lower level where most of the crew operate had previously housed the gunner chairs. Early drafts of Return to Genesis originally featured the Romulans as the antagonists, with motives quite different from the Klingons in the final film. Upon arriving at the Genesis planet, the Romulan commander and a team beamed down to investigate unusual life form readings, essentially Spock, and made a remarkable discovery beyond an empty burial tube. Their scanners detected vast quantities of raw dilithium, the 23rd century equivalent of plutonium. Consequently, their interest in the planet was less about the destructive potential of the Genesis device and more about obtaining dilithium crystals, which powered their cloaking devices. Although the building housing Admiral Kirk's apartment is never shown in either The Wrath of Khan or The Search for Spock, his street address can be roughly determined as the Glass Tower on Market Street in San Francisco. This is because the backdrop visible outside the windows was reused from the 1974 disaster film The Towering Inferno, where it depicted views from the upper floors of the eponymous tower. Mark Lenard was thrilled to be asked to reprise his role as Sarek, although this did present a few challenges on how the character should appear, nearly 20 years after his last on-screen appearance. There was a period of adjusting the eyebrows and hairstyle, aided by a video of the original episode, Journey to Babel. The ears were also redesigned. In the episode, they were larger and more exaggerated, whereas in the film they were scaled down and more delicate. This made them more comfortable for the actor, and the larger cinema screen allowed the crew greater freedom to include finer details. And there you have it, folks. You now know a little bit more about Star Trek III: The Search for Spock. If you enjoyed the video, which I presume you did as you got this far, hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss any future videos coming to Rocky Watches Movies. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.